this opened up a whole new world. Now remember, this is the 30s, a whole new world. There were 1,400 students, all of English background, except the two of us. And we discovered what we were going to learn, the languages, trigonometry, geometry, things we had never heard of, because at the public school level, they were not even mentioned. And we enrolled and went there. And we had to walk back and forth, so we took lunches. And we began to get our bearings in this new community. One afternoon at lunch hour, I heard music. When I say I, my chum is always with me. And we went up to the auditorium and saw our first orchestra. Now these beginnings are very primitive in a way, but it shows the different worlds that people lived in. The teachers thought I should ready myself for university. And of course, I didn't even know what a university was. So I began to study for a university. I knew I would have to pay.
Did you communicate any of this to your family? Did any of your brothers or sisters follow you?
Interestingly enough, no.
This was a world where you lived?
This was a world where I lived in the daytime and came home at night to be with them and the family. As a result of my writing examinations, I win scholarship in third and fourth year. And then came, of course, the fifth year, the year before the university. And I began to study all day at home. Not all day, because I did to and from the school. The teachers were very good. They tutored me. And when the results came out, I picked my university by finding out who had the most scholarships. And of course it was the University of Toronto. McMaster University in Allen was just beginning. So I wrote on, you had to choose your university. I wrote on the University of Toronto. When the results came out in the paper, I had won 5 scholarships. I could go to university for 10 years. And there was cash with the scholarships, which paid, which were extras, which were going to pay for my living, part of my living expenses. And so that was quite a hit for the high school. There were 4 of the top scholarships given up for Ontario, and I was one of them. So I've always been thankful that I was born bright, but I also worked very hard. I studied and studied and studied.
What kind of
I was a general practitioner by myself, and because I had been very good at the law school, there was nothing I couldn't tackle, and sort of became an expert in what my client needed.
Who were your clients? Where did they come from?
Mostly, a great many of them were of Ukrainian origin. Now, in the meantime, while at university, I am establishing contacts within the Ukrainian community. I am going to their church service. I take the bus with them when the choir and the clergyman, the priest, came to Hamilton to have a service. And I am learning Ukrainian very rapidly because of my Ukrainian clientele. And it is a regrettable fact of life that often one is judged not by what can do or what one has in his head, but what comes out at the end of the tongue. And I have always been very sympathetic to people who arrive in Canada and who have to struggle with another language. At university, at high school, I learned English, French, German, Latin, but not Ukrainian. I was fluent in all of those, could read in all of those. I bought Ukrainian newspaper that was published. I had accepted that I was going to be a lawyer. I knew from watching as a young boy in Welland and in Hamilton, the respect that lawyers got. And in Hamilton, I found out the respect that elected people got, and the combination really took respect. So I had this outlook for the future, and I joined the Writing Association, became the secretary through the ranks.
This is the conservative, progressive
Conservative. Progressive Conservative. They had had a marvelous change of leadership and attitude. George Drew had a 22-point program of positive things that he was going to do. John Diefenbaker became a leading light out west, and I was following his career. And so I had lived most of the years of that university in the Bellwoods area. I was very familiar. I walked to and from the university, very familiar, and that was part of the Writing Association area, and became very active in that. And it was held and had been held by the leader of the Communist Party since 1943, when the Soviet Union joined in the war on the side of the Allies. There was a completely change of attitude, but then by 1943, the Cold War had set in. But he had, by 51, the Cold War had set in. He had been elected in 43, 45, 48, and this was his election.
So in 1951, there was a communist sitting member for Bellwoods.
Yes, the leader of the Communist Party of Ontario.
Was it Tim Buck then?
No, it was Alec MacLeod.
Alec MacLeod.
Alec MacLeod. And it was coming sooner than I had anticipated. I had expected, like others, to have had a lengthy career in law and then go into public service. But my sense that I had gathered through the years of rubbing shoulders, as it were, with people in public life, I sensed that this could be the time. And so I put my name up for nomination. It was contested, and I won the nomination by several votes. But in election campaigns, as the recent United States campaign, it's, you win by whatever votes you're ahead of. And so I ran as a candidate. And that was my entry into politics. And when it was announced I was a candidate for the Progressive Conservative Party in 1951, it wasn't a question of who is Yaremko, but what is a Yaremko? It was the first time that a name like that had appeared on a ballot in Ontario. So but in politics, there was nobody. There was one other card-carrying Progressive Conservative in Toronto, and I am running as a candidate. But the feeling of the community was so positive. To see someone as a candidate, and again, if I may say in all modesty, a first-rate candidate, they were very proud of the fact. And I turned to many of them because through those years from 45 years, from 46 to 51, I had established a lot of personal contacts, not knowing what the 1951 was going to come along, as it then was, but because I was enjoying myself, I was relearning about being Ukrainian. And because I no longer have all of the requirements of university learning, and I began to learn about the history and was horrified at the 1,000 years that the Ukrainians lived through. Unbelievable. Because I have grown up in the British tradition, British parliaments, the British democracy, all of the things that they had developed through the century for their people. I couldn't even see a map of Ukraine. I had the roughest idea. It was only because of the capital of Austro-Hungary that I found out where Chernivtsi was, and I knew roughly. But when I looked at a map and saw there was a place called Lemberg, another map that had LVOV, Lvov, where's Lviv? And then I began to put the pieces together and see what happened to the Ukrainian lands through the years, magnificent lands.
In this your rediscovery of Ukrainian history, did you have anybody as a kind of mentor, or was this something you did completely on your own?
Almost by osmosis from people, because I didn't attend any formal thing, but it was by osmosis, and between the leadership of the the ones that came 100 years ago to Toronto, which we celebrated recently. Incidentally, I chaired the dinner, 1951 dinner at the Royal York Hotel, which celebrated the 60th anniversary of the coming, and that of course put me really in the limelight so far as the Toronto and outside Ontario community generally was. I had established myself as a very active Canadian of Ukrainian origin. Still very active, and this is not an easy way to be, to live in two different cultural communities at the same time, and to take leadership in both communities. because I knew as much about the British traditions as anybody who'd been in England from 1066, because as a lawyer, the basis of our law is the common law, which stems from there. So I had the parliamentary experience and the legal experience of this. And then when I saw how a great people, a great culture had been literally deprived through their days, and I was to discover that in latter life, the fact that they were wonderful farmers and but the city life, where university life, educational life, those things were beyond the dreams of generations of people of Ukrainian origin. And I felt very strongly about this because I realized what the opportunity that had been given to me in Canada, what it enabled to me, because I saw many who didn't take advantage of it, or who didn't have the ability, or were handicapped in some way of taking those advantages. So I am learning all this, and it's fascinating. It is really fascinating. To me, the most amazing thing was that in spite of depredation, in spite of this having no ability, the Ukrainians clung to being Ukrainian through centuries. They didn't lose their identity, and they were very proud of it, and of the customs which are carried on by us in a different way. And I have no difficulty being Canadian to the core and being Ukrainian to the same core. I mean, I have no difficulty with this. In fact, I find it very satisfying to share this. And all this has come to me in the latter, in the period of time when I was in Toronto.
The fact of your being Ukrainian ever raised by your communist opponent during the election?
Yes. And I have no word for it, but it was so horrendous that it's not the kind of thing that I even want to remember. I know it took place.
It was a smear.
But the detail, everything, every aspect that could be. I've been through many campaigns. I've never saw anything so vicious.
Now, in the following years, you served as minister in 7 cabinet positions. Can you highlight some of the things that you are most proud of during your membership of the cabinet?
Yes. Apart from my ministerial responsibility and interest, I had a overriding feeling about citizenship and human rights, and took every opportunity of stating my feelings. Equality of opportunity, equality and full rights, non-discrimination, to permit people to find their fulfillment within their capacity without any hindrance. As a result, when I became provincial secretary, the government added to the office of provincial secretary, which I became my first portfolio, the Department of Citizenship. And we could do everything except grant citizenship. And we provided all of the means, or many of the means, by which people were able to become full and good citizens. A popular word at that time was assimilation. It seemed to a great many people that those who come to Canada should allow themselves to be assimilated. The assimilation in the dictionary meaning is not a very attractive term. And I stress at all opportunity the use of the word integration. That newcomers should be integrated into the society, into the community. To do that, they needed the tools. We began to provide them with the tools. Teaching English as a second language became a part of regular life for many. We made publications in 10 different languages. We published summaries of the various departments of the provincial government so that people were aware of what was available to them through the government, what the government did for them. I may say in retrospect that the government of that day was not as large as the government of that day, not the government of today, which has grown tremendously. And that was the highlight of the Department of Citizenship.